So I was in bed last night when my wife Emily showed me a TikTok of David Corenswet, the actor who's playing Superman in the new movie, and he had this to say about Superman's iconic red trunks.
The problem with the trunks is that they look kind of silly. My contribution, I think, was to say, what if the point is that they look a little silly? He doesn't want to look cool, and the trunks are just a way of saying, I'm not too cool, I don't take myself too seriously. Come say hi, come laugh at me. Who cares? I can take it.
Absolutely. And Emily was right to send me that TikTok because she knows I'm wild about these red trunks. I made a video a couple of years ago defending Superman's red trunks because Superman wearing his red trunks is intentionally a little goofy, which helps him feel a little bit more approachable. And I want to be clear here that I am calling the classic suit silly in the most affectionate way. Superman should be a little dorky. That's what makes this otherwise threatening, powerful alien charming and comforting. And I don't know, it's just nice to hear other content creators like David Corenswet also echoing those same sentiments. Speaking of echoing, by the way, much like this narrow hallway, Superman's red trunks have echoed throughout the history of the character ever since his creation all the way back in Action Comics #1. Since then, they've appeared in all kinds of media, from toys, to video games, to comic books, to nearly all of the live-action portrayals of Superman. I say nearly because of, well, let's talk about it. So, a funny thing about the original Action Comics and other Golden Age Superman comics like it are that the red trunks served multiple purposes. One of them was how it helped to break up the character and make it easier for readers to follow the action from page to page. I mean, you might not remember this or know it even, but Golden Age comics back in the day were printed on really cheap paper with a printing process that was far from high fidelity. So having a character design like this, where all the reader has to focus on are big blocks of blue interrupted by little bits of red, like the trunk there in the middle, it was helpful for the reader to follow the action, to follow that character. But it's exactly those red trunks breaking up the design that people argue against in a modern era. It's why Henry Cavill's Superman is like this impenetrable wall of blue, right? Because the red trunks, they interrupt the sleek, streamlined design of the Superman costume. Not that Zack Snyder didn't at least try to find a design that worked with the red trunks. According to James Gunn, in an interview, he said, quote, "I was on the no trunks team for a long time. And Zack Snyder said that when he was doing it, he tried a billion different trunk versions as we did. And I kept going back to no trunks, no trunks, no trunks." And as much as I would love to leave Zack Snyder and his Superman films in the past, I'm not going to because I hate my comment section. But it's not hard to understand this problem with the trunks, right? I mean, it wasn't really long into Superman's history that fans of Superman themselves started wondering about the trunks. They looked antiquated, they looked weird. People lost the understanding of why he even has them. In Supergods, for example, Grant Morrison wastes no time at all, just 14 pages in, before they ask this question. Because there's really only one question everyone wants to ask when the subject of Superman comes up. If he's so goddamn super, why does he wear his underpants outside his tights? Now, if you know anything about comic book history, and I think you do, you're a nerd like me, you already know the answer to this question. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were so inspired to design Superman with the cape and the spandex tights, and of course, the trunks themselves, because they knew that the peak of human masculinity and strength was circus strongmen. Just like me and how masculine I look right now. My wife, who's filming, gave me a big thumbs up, so I'm happy about that. But I think people focus too much on the strongman part of circus strongman when they're talking about the history of superhero designs and costumes. We don't really focus too much on the circus part. And I think that's important because circus strongmen, they were performers, they were entertainers, they were showmen, right? They didn't want to exude so much power and strength to scare off, to intimidate other people. That would be bad for business. No, you needed to feel and look approachable so that families, specifically families with little kids, would be so in awe of the feats of strength that you're doing that they would want to come and say hi. They would want to see what you were doing. It was important to be approachable. And David Corenswet understands this. To continue with that James Gunn interview, he says, quote, "David said something to me that really affected me. Superman wants kids to not be afraid of him. He's an alien. He's got these incredible powers. He shoots beams out of his eyes. He can blow a truck over. So he dresses like a professional wrestler. He dresses in a way that makes people unafraid of him, that shows that positivity." That really clicked for me. Did I do this? Do the red trunks look a little silly? Yes, they do. But that's the point.
My contribution, I think, was to say, what if the point is that they look a little silly?
Like, all right, I don't want to give myself that much credit for my video a couple of years ago, but it is just so refreshing to hear other people, especially people tied to a new Superman franchise, saying the exact same things that I've been saying about Superman's trunks for the last couple of years. I mean, think about what Grant Morrison said, right? If he is so super, why is he wearing trunks on the outside of his tights? It's because the trunks give him his humanity. They show a little bit of softness in Superman. Yes, he is super, but he's also man, right? You can't separate the two. He's Superman. Because you know what happens when you split up super and man and you just have a character who's only super? Come with me. So right now, I'm working on a video about Crypto the Super Dog. It'll be out whenever it's out. But I'm stumbling into a character that comes up a lot in this era of comic books, unfortunately. And it's this guy right here, Fredric Wertham. Now, if you know anything about comic history, and again, I think we've established that you do, you know Fredric Wertham as the guy who wrote Seduction of the Innocent. This was a guy who believed firmly that comic books and superheroes were poisoning the minds of young children. They were a malicious force corrupting the morals of adolescents. Now, he was mostly talking about crime and horror comic books, but I mean, if you're gonna swing at comic books, you're gonna swing at superheroes, and who else are you gonna swing at other than Superman himself? So, Wertham wrote, "Ostensible heroes, such as Superman, tended to solve problems through the use of force and thereby taught children to be submissive to authoritarianism." Quote, "Superman, with the big S on his uniform, we should, I suppose, be thankful it's not an SS. It's a little Nazi joke from Fredric Wertham. Needs an endless stream of ever new submen, criminals, and foreign-looking people, not only to justify his existence, but to even make it possible. End quote. Now, Wertham was far from the only critic. He was obviously the most vocal and the most outspoken and popular at the time, but there were other writers, like a Time magazine author who wrote that Superman is akin to a Nazi in an article called Are Comics Fascist? He also, there was also another writer that talked about how comic books demonstrated to children, quote, the nihilistic man of totalitarian ideology. They did not mince words about this. They believed comic books and superheroes, and specifically Superman, was a representative of all of these ideals they didn't like. Authoritarianism, Nazism even. Now, I bring this up not to say that we're on the verge of another debate for comic book history, saying that, oh, comic books are gonna be poisoning the minds of children once again. You know, I think it's important to remember that the Senate subcommittee hearing on juvenile delinquency ended by saying that no, comics aren't bad for children. Stop. But I do think it's ironic that in a modern era, we've come back around on a design of Superman that to me feels very militaristic. And I know that's not helped by the fact that one of the most popular images of Henry Cavill as Superman is him standing in front of US military vehicles and personnel and weaponry. But I mean, come on, they put this in the movie for a reason. They wanted you to associate these two. But I'm just so happy that we've moved on from this and are instead focusing once again on the glory and the silliness of the trunks. I don't know if you can see this. My cat sneezed on it here. It doesn't matter. But look, we're trying to do this all in one take, and we've gotten this far, so here's all I'll say, just to end it out. I love Superman's goofy little trunks. To me, they are not just some sort of frivolous costume choice, this meaningless element of a bygone era, all right? They are a little bit that, but they're not just that, okay? To me, hopefully my audio is good here. To me, the trunks represent something important about Superman. Look, I'm being goofy, Superman is goofy. These trunks represent Superman's humanity, his humility, and his intent to serve rather than to subjugate. And I think that's awesome. And I love that they're kind of wacky. And besides, if you wanted to watch a James Gunn produced Superman film that's kind of a authoritarian power fantasy of the character, just watch Brightburn. I remember it being fine. It's fine.